This is Shifting Our Schools episode 109, Building Relationships with Students Through Technology.
I guess I would describe my classroom as kind of relaxed. I mean, Chris has been in there. I don't have these really strong and fast, hard rules. I know at Libby, our school rule is you're tardy if you're not in your seat when the bell rings. And some teachers are very strict with that. If you're not ready to go, unexcused tardy. And I'm just, I don't know. I'm more relaxed. I think kids feel more comfortable. I try to decorate my classroom to not look so much like a classroom.
Oh, cool.
So last year, I had brown paper that looked like wood planking on the walls. And this year I have white. I had to move classrooms. But it's, 3 walls are covered in wood, and I have a couch and other seating and pillows and a stand-up desk and just anything to kind of make them more comfortable in the space while I have them.
Listen up, educators. Are you looking to take your classroom to the next level? The technological shift in education is happening right now. If you're looking to integrate technology into your classroom, you're in the right place. Welcome to Shifting Our Schools with your host, Jeff Udick.
Well, welcome back to another episode of Shifting Our Schools. Thank you for listening and subscribing to us in your favorite podcast player. If you aren't subscribed, you can do that now by just searching Shifting Our Schools anywhere on Google or in your favorite podcast player, and you should find us there. If you don't, let me know and I'll make sure that we get there. We really do appreciate all of you who continue to spread the word about Shifting Our Schools. We'd love to hear your thoughts on different episodes, and you can do that by tweeting us using the hashtag SOS Podcast, or use the hashtag SOS Podcast. Let us know where you listen to podcasts. Where do you like to listen to podcasts? I ran into a listener recently who has about an hour commute to school and uses that time to listen to Shifting Our Schools along with other educational podcasts. What a great use of time. And she really talked about how it helps her prepare every morning for the work that she does with her students. Just a reminder, we are giving away a Flipgrid pop-up recording tent for your classroom or school between now and the end of February. If you want to check out that tent, there is a video over on our Flipgrid where you can see it for yourself. Just go to sospodcast.org and click on Flipgrid at the top. How do you win this tent, you ask? All you have to do is leave us your Flipgrid response by going to sospodcast.org and clicking on Flipgrid at the top, and there you will be able to log in and leave your response to this week's question, or using the Flipgrid code SOS Podcast in the Flipgrid app. So if you download the Flipgrid app to your phone, enter the code SOS Podcast, you can record directly from your phone. We will also be using your responses in upcoming episodes of Shifting Our Schools as well, so that we all continue to learn from each other. Also, I was finally able to get back control of the email that I set up for this podcast back in 2006. After 2007, we went on this hiatus up until about a year ago, and I've been trying to get back into the email. Couldn't remember the password, of course. The phone number that was associated with it was from when I lived in Shanghai, so that didn't work, but I finally managed to get in. So you can now email us your questions, ideas, things you'd like us to hear as well over at sospodcast@gmail.com. That's sospodcast@gmail.com. So feel free to reach out to us there if you'd like to be on the show, if you have questions or comments, or things you'd like us to talk about and cover. That's a great place to get a hold of Chris Butler and I over at sospodcast@gmail.com. Each week, we ask a question based on that week's episode for you to ponder about, and then leave your responses on our Flipgrid. Every response you leave enters you to win that Flipgrid pop-up tent between now and the end of February. So here's this week's question. What have you found works with this generation in building those critical relationships with them? We know that relationships with students is the number one thing that us teachers need to constantly be working on. That it's that relationship between us and the students that allows students to be open to learning in our classrooms. So the question is, what have you found works with this generation in building those critical relationships with them? Again, just record your answer to that question over on our Flipgrid to enter your chance to win a Flipgrid pop-up tent, or send us a message at sospodcast@gmail.com. This is how we all grow, by sharing and learning from each other. This week, Chris Butler and I have a chat with Kaci, a middle school teacher who has students wanting to interact with her even on snow days. A great reminder on the power of technology to help us connect with each other and our students. I hope you enjoy. And with that, on with the show. All right, welcome back to another episode of Shifting Our Schools. Great to be back here with Kaci from the Richland School District. So that'll be awesome. We'll get to talk to her in just a little bit. But first and foremost, my co-host Chris Butler is back. A day in the life of the tech coach, Chris Butler, continues. How'd your day go today, Chris?
Day was good today. It was another mostly office day. Just doing some planning. Beginning of the second semester's coming up, so doing some planning for that, for training sessions and that sort of thing. But it was my office is in the district office, and we have our boardroom there. And there was a training going on for a bunch of the new teachers, so got to poke my head in there and hang out with them a little bit and say hi and see how they were doing. So that was kind of cool.
Got to get your name and face in front of people.
Yeah. And a bunch of I had met before, but it was just kind of cool to touch base with them and just check in and see how everything was going. So
it was an office day for me today as well. I made a couple of videos for an upcoming training I'm doing down in Enumclaw School District. Yeah. And so I had to make these videos of showing teachers, how to use WeVideo and how to make a slide animation with Google Slides, and it's just some how-to videos. And the problem is they take so long to render.
Oh, right.
I make the video and then it's like, okay, make a video. And then it's like, you've got 45 minutes. And so then you're sitting here like, what do I do for 45 minutes? And you can't touch your computer because the computer will crash.
Exactly.
It's just like multitasking with something else had to do something else. It's crazy. But I got those done today. So I'm feeling good. Well, Kaci, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. Why don't you let our listeners know kind of where you are from and your journey into education?
Yeah, thank you. So thank you for having me, first of all. So I actually grew up in a tiny town called Royal City, Washington.
Oh, yay.
Nowhere, yeah. And when I graduated, I went to Central Washington University, and I actually got an undergrad degree in IT. Nice. But it's one of those, when you graduate, you think you're going to have all these job opportunities, and nothing. And so I want to say about nine years ago, actually, I joined the Richland School District as a secretary in the teaching and learning department. Cool. And, I primarily handle at the time, clock hours, processing clock hours for teachers. That kind of morphed into handling all the trainings for teachers and setting those up in principals. I handled online accounts for our Read 180 classes. Met Chris Butler that way. And I worked in that job for 6 years, and I was like, what am I doing with my life? I love this. I love being in an education. I love English. I love writing. My best friend is an author. And so, and I was getting out into classrooms more and working with our admin really at the district level, talking about the why for our vision for technology. And Chris was with me when we were writing our mission statement for that. And all of this stuff together, I was like, wow, maybe I should be a teacher. Let's just combine all these things I love into one. So I went and got my master's in teaching.
If only there was a job that would let me do
what could I do?
Right? What could I do? So I kind of combined all of those things and got my master's from GCU, and then did my student teaching at Richland High, which was amazing.
Very cool.
Yeah. And now I'm at Libby Middle School for the second year.
Awesome.
Yeah. Teaching 6th and 7th graders.
So cool. I love everybody's story. Everybody has different stories of ways they've gotten. I mean, I've had airplane pilots who decided to become teachers. It's just amazing. People, the different path people get into this profession. So I guess you have an embarrassing story about how we first met. I don't remember, so I apologize.
I do. No, absolutely. I didn't expect you to remember this at all. So I can't even remember the year, but probably it was very early on with my job at Richland School District. You were coming to speak at what used to be the RTI PLC conference.
Okay.
And it was for our whole district staff in the auditorium at Richland High. And the secretary who was over that asked me to start this looped presentation. And so as they came in, they knew what the Wi-Fi password was and all this information for, all educators, right?
Right.
For our school district. And I get in there, I'm like, okay, she has it all ready. I plug it in and it won't loop. And having an IT degree, right? Yeah. Microsoft PowerPoint, should be super easy to figure out. And we just upgraded versions, whatever the old was to the new. I couldn't figure out. And I'm like, well, there's this dude in the front seat. All this right?
He looks like he knows what he's doing.
Yeah. So like, hey, do you know technology? Happened to be you, right? Yeah. I'm like, okay, can you help me? You figured it out. You also struggled though. So maybe.
Yeah, probably.
And then I think I asked you like, hey, what school are you from? And you're like, I'm Jeff Udick. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, I literally have been communicating with you via email because you sent your contract to me.
Yeah, and just didn't put a face to the name. Yeah.
That's
Well, there
funny.
it is. Yeah.
Tell them you're saying. Yeah.
You'd be surprised though how many times that has happened.
Yeah.
Where I am ready to go on stage, and usually school districts have much like that, some kind of presentation before you go on that has the Wi-Fi password, lunch is at this time, the schedule, and for some reason it doesn't start, PowerPoint crashes,
Right.
Something happens, I end up going up there and be like, well, we click here, and I just can't stand it because I hate to watch people struggle. I'm like, oh, it's right there, and I do remember struggling. I remember going like, because I don't use PowerPoint a lot, I know it can be done, and I kind of am familiar enough, but I remember sitting there going like, this shouldn't be this difficult. There should just be a
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that's cool. Well, it was nice to meet you. It's good to have you back. It's good to have you back. Well, I want to talk a little bit about, there's some things that you wrote down here in the notes that I think are so impactful for people to hear your stories and talk about some of your experiences. And I wanted to start with, we were just talking before we started recording that snow is on its way again here in the state of Washington. And you were talking about about this idea of building strong relationships and how you were able to use that last year during our snow days. Can you kind of go into kind of what came out of that? That sounds like such a cool story.
Yeah, absolutely. So last year I taught 4 sections of 6th grade English, and we use the Summit Learning platform for that. So it's great. It's it has curriculum built into it. It has mentoring built into it, and it has 16 habits of success that the students focus on, all tied up in this nice little bow. So that was great. I mentored those kids extensively. And then I also taught 1 section of 7th grade Washington State history in Canvas. And so there wasn't this dedicated mentoring time. And I did find it to be more of a struggle to connect with those kids when I didn't have the purposeful built-in mentoring time with them. And so, I did what I could all the way, the whole beginning of the year. And then the snow hit us really hard about this time last year.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, how can I try to entertain the kids but have learning involved? And I had a couple students actually emailing me, and they're like, I want to go back to school because we had a full week of snow days.
Yeah. And
so I'm like, well, let's just play Quizlet live, like at home. I got 27 students. Let's see how many want to spend their evening, 7 p.m. playing Quizlet live. And I figured maybe 5 of them would join in. We had 22 kids.
Holy cow.
And
that's great.
It was really cool. And then we did that for an hour. And
how did you reach out to them? Was this through Canvas? Did you just email everybody, say, we're going to play Quizlet live at 7:00, or? Yeah,
I just sent out a Canvas announcement, and we played. And some kids, their device died because they were at grandma's house or whatever. And so they were getting on cell phones and like logging back in and sending me messages saying, I'm ready, add me back in. I'm like, okay. And then I got a bunch of emails from them afterward, and we're like, can we do this again tomorrow?
Wow.
Like, during their snow days.
During their snow days. Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. So we did it again, and then they wanted to do it again the 3rd day. And so a teacher down the hall from me actually only taught 1 section of Washington State history like myself. And so she was like, I want in on this action.
Cool.
So her class joined in, and she had about 20 students. We had almost 50 kids.
Wow.
At home on a snow day playing Quizlet live.
That's awesome.
I thought that was pretty cool.
And what do you think helped bring that together? Like, now that you've had a pretty close to a year now to reflect on it. That idea of setting up those, there's got to be a relationship beforehand. Mm-hmm. There has to be something special about your classroom that during snow days, kids are also emailing you saying, I want to go back to school. That doesn't happen normally.
Yeah.
So as you kind of reflect, what are some of those things? What are some of those structures in your classroom to like build those relationships with those kiddos?
I don't know. I guess I would describe my classroom as kind of relaxed. Chris has been in there. I don't have these like really strong and fast, hard rules. Like I know at Libby, like our school rules, like you're tardy if you're not in your seat when the bell rings. And some teachers are very strict with that. Like if you're not ready to go, like unexcused tardy. And I'm just, I don't know. I'm more relaxed. I think kids feel more comfortable. I try to decorate my classroom to not look so much like a classroom.
Oh, cool.
So last year, I had brown paper that looked like wood planking on the walls. And this year I have white. I had to move classrooms. But it's, 3 walls are covered in wood, and I have a couch and other seating and pillows and a stand-up desk and just anything to kind of make them more comfortable in the space while I have them. I think contributes to it.
Yeah.
And we've kind of built in this relationship of having these little competitions with Quizlet Live. So I think that they were kind of missing that anyways.
Okay.
And just that interaction. So
yeah. And it was already a program they knew. They'd already known how to use it. You'd used it in class. So a very low bar, like you don't need a lot of tech help at home in order to continue learning during snow days. The other thing that I think is really interesting to bring up is this is why whenever I'm talking with teachers when they're going one-to-one or in a tech-heavy classroom is you've got to have a home base. For you, that's Canvas, or it can be Google Classroom. It doesn't matter, but you need to have that so that when times like that happen, being able to push an announcement out and know that every kid is going to get it, whether every kid comes to the live session, but you have to have some way that's already established before the crisis hits.
Yep.
Right. Like if you try to start your Canvas course the day before snow days, it's not going to work. And that's part of that just routine that we have to think about now in classrooms as we head into 2020 is that there's your physical classroom and your digital space, this digital classroom, but you have to have that set up so that moments like this can happen. So you can get those announcements out and students are just used to, this is the way that we work in 2020, which it is. This is the way we work in 2020, whether you're in a school or in a business.
And I think it's so important to point out that the way we work in 2020, and the kids all have computers in their hands, they have devices in their hands. We're quote unquote breaking down the 4 walls of the classroom, right? Learning can happen anywhere, anytime. And this is just one great example of that. But there's also, and having known Kaci for a long time and been in her class and seen how her kids respond to the way it feels in her classroom, the way they feel, the way she makes them feel comfortable, and it makes learning fun, that learning, having devices in the hands absolutely can allow us to break down the 4 walls. But if they don't want to learn, if you don't have that connection, which you do, if you don't have those relationships like we always talk about, then they're not going to want to do that. So that's crazy important, that relationship piece that you build with those kids.
Are cell phones allowed in your classroom?
No, only because that is a school rule I try to follow.
Yeah.
Occasionally, if we're working on a project and a kid is, working on a personal narrative and they're creating a collage and they need a picture off their phone, I'll let them go get it, come in, do their business, go put it away. But that's like the one school rule I definitely try to follow.
So what's your take on that, Jeff? When we were first going one-to-one and we weren't full one-to-one, so not all the kids had devices. We had kind of a BYOD model, also a bring your own device. So I allowed and encouraged kids to have their cell phones and be able to use them for research or projects or that sort of thing, in addition to the laptops that we had available. But I think a lot of classes now that there are schools that are going one-to-one and the kids do have devices, they're kind of saying, we don't need the phones now because we have the devices.
Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, I'd like to hear Kaci's take on this as well. Cause I just hearing you talk, I asked you that question because I was like, if it wasn't a school rule, you would have said, of course I do. Because I don't think it would be a big thing for your classroom. Like, I don't think you would have any phone management issues and I understand it's a school rule and it is what it is.
Yeah.
But, no, you're the kind of teacher that would be just like, well, of course there's phones in the classroom. Duh, they're not that big of a deal.
Exactly. And that's when I was at Richland High. The high school at the time was not one-to-one yet. There was just the carts in certain classrooms. And so it was really hard for me to get to them. Being a student teacher, not doing the process of which spreadsheet to put my name in on what day to get it. And then if you need them for a few extra days, another teacher might be signed up for the cart, so you can't. And so the students use their cell phones a lot, and to not only type papers, but a lot of them use the voice to text feature on their phone into a Google Doc that they then edited later when we did have the carts. And so it was really helpful, and I didn't find it as distracting. And maybe that's because they have had their phones for a few years. And these middle schoolers in 6th grade or 7th grade are just getting their phone and it's so brand new. it's, burning a hole in their pocket and they just have to do something.
Yeah.
But I think if you built that into your classroom routine, that it wouldn't be that big of a deal.
And I think there's also something else with that is when you are older and you've had your phone for a while, you're trying to find ways of how can this device support me? And when you aren't one-to-one and I still need to type a paper, I'll type it on my phone. Like the first time I walked into a classroom and I was in a school that was one-to-one and kids were still allowed to have cell phones. And I walked in, like, this was a mind-blowing moment for me. Like, it showed my age big time. Because I walk in and the kid is typing he's got this phone sideways and he's typing the paper on his phone and his research is on his laptop. Now, I was just like, what are you doing? He's like, well, I can type so much faster this way. And I'm like, it's just because that's not my world. My world is my research is on my phone and I will type on a computer because that's how I grew up and that's how I work best, which is why, to your question, Chris, I don't know why we're blocking them. I don't know why why has education decided we're going to die on the hill of the cell phone? And not every school has. And here's what I have found. I have not found a school yet that has been able to ban cell phones and be able to show me that there isn't some reason, for example, Casey's reason of like, oh, you've got that picture on your phone, go get that phone. Right. It's another device. Like I worked in the office all day today. I have a computer and a phone with me and my phone is doing some of the work and my computer is doing some of the work. Now in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, do we need to teach kids how to learn with that device? Absolutely. And that's the problem is we just say, well, they're only doing social media. They're only because that's all they've been taught or that's all they know how to do from each other. Nobody's taught them how to learn. Or by the time they're in high school, they've had to figure it out or they haven't. There are still plenty of distractions. Or in your kids weren't in high school, weren't one-to-one. And they're like, I've got this powerful device that I can talk to and will type my paper. I'll just do that. You could teach that to a 6th grader and that would blow their mind as well. Right. And understanding that these tools are there. And I keep saying like, because this comes up all the time when I'm working with school districts. And right now I keep relating the cell phone to where we were with calculators in the 80s, right? Like the calculator came out and it was like, we got to keep them out of the classroom. You know, what happens if you don't have one on you? And then we made them solar paneled and it was like, okay, well now we don't have to worry about the battery run out, but maybe you won't ever have one on you. So then we turned them into a watch. If you remember the watch, they had the little keypad on it. And all of a sudden, all along, education is saying, stay away from the calculator, stay waiting for the calculator, stay with the calculator. And then at some point, and I don't know when this happened, at some point, somebody said, well, I want every kid to buy a $130 calculator to come to class. Right? And I don't know why that happened. And now we just accept the fact that everybody could have access to a calculator the moment they needed to do high-level math or math problems. I think we're in that same spot with cell phones. I think we're in this battle of don't bring them to class. They're a distraction. We're not sure what we're doing with them. And all of a sudden, one day, we're all going to turn around like, what were we doing? Like, look at the power this thing has in taking photos of your homework, bringing photos from home for a project, being able to talk to your paper into your device. It's the right tool for those type of jobs. You know?
Well, there was actually today, it was kind of funny because in between one of our classes, there was a girl on her phone in the hallway, which you can't do, right? And she's kind of like moving behind me and kind of hiding herself. And I was like, what are you doing? She goes, I have to give a science presentation soon and I forgot my note cards. I got to get them off my phone. And then she ran out of time. She was going to be tardy and she's a very studious girl. She's like, oh man, I guess I just can't present today. And I was like, well, if they're just on your phone. Like,
why can't you stand and read them off your phone?
And use it, use that as your notes.
They're a digital note card. I don't know.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, that's what it's a lot of
presentations
do that. Yeah, absolutely.
That's right.
Yeah.
No, that's a perfect example, right? And if you have that tool and you're like, we're using this tool for a purpose and you've been taught the purpose, right? And I think that's a lot of it is we haven't taught the purpose. Yeah. And so it becomes a distraction. And we just assume kids know, and they don't. We assume that a lot with technology. And we just kids don't know how to learn with technology until they're taught how to learn with technology.
And that's a conversation I have with teachers a lot. And, you know, we need to teach them how to do it. And we need to teach them, like when I had the phones in my class, they had devices also probably most of the time. But I said like, hey, in here, phones, it's a tool. It's not a toy, you know, and that was high school kids, but they need to be taught. Yeah.
It's a powerful tool if you know how to use it. Yeah. I mean, I have plenty of people, regardless of age, that have a very powerful tool in their pocket and don't know how to use it. Right? We all have those. Kaci, let's talk a little bit about this problem or project-based learning that you have going on in your classroom too. Some of the things you wrote here in the notes is you're looking at doing this really cool trial with the Outsiders. Can you kind of talk about what you kind of have planned with that? That looks like a cool project.
Yeah, so it is really cool, I think. And so we actually just had our presentation yesterday, our event, so I can tell you about that. So I teach 7th grade English with one other teacher, and we're just getting ready to start The Outsiders. And as we read this novel, kids have one of 3 characters that they have to track throughout, and their personality and how they've changed. And then they ultimately have to determine whether they are guilty or innocent, and how they have to defend them with evidence from the book. And they have to write trial briefs, and we're going to put on a mock trial. And so to kind of bring that real world connection, if you will, into the classroom, we're lucky enough to have 2 teachers on staff who are both married to lawyers.
Oh, wow. That's perfect
So,
connection.
yeah, it was perfect. And so they took 2 hours out of their day yesterday and came in and presented to about 150, 160 kids who are in the summit program for 7th grade. And, they just had a PowerPoint of really funny information of how to persuade a jury and a judge and everybody, showing them visuals and, the art of persuasion, if you will.
Yeah.
And then we did some improv because my co-teacher, my partner teacher, is also the drama teacher.
Oh, cool.
So she was able to give them a scenario of like, Mrs. Presnell just created a rule for her classroom that no white shoes are allowed. And there happened to be kids in the room with, white tennis shoes on. And so we brought them up on stage and had a prosecutor and a defense attorney and, put them on the spot to defend or
their choice of white shoes.
Their choice of white shoes or not. And then it was great. The kids really responded to that. And then we also put into play the school rule of no gum. What are the pros and cons of gum in the classroom? So there wasn't actually someone on trial, but they were arguing a rule. And we got our assistant principal to join in.
Oh, very cool.
Awesome.
So that was really cool. And then we just opened the floor. We prepared questions ahead of time and not give a mic to any middle schooler, but we prepared questions ahead of time that they got to ask also. And so it really opened their eyes. I know I do have a few students who hope to be lawyers someday. And then we started reading the novel today, which I've read it 3 times today.
Yeah.
So I like to read to them.
Yeah.
And so my voice is a little rough, but they're so excited.
Yeah.
They're just
You primed it perfectly.
Yeah.
I mean, who wouldn't be excited to dive in after that kind of prime? And a couple of things I love that you're talking about is the resources that we have around us that sometimes I think we overlook.
Mhm.
You were just like, we just happen to have 2 teachers who are married to lawyers. I wonder how many people in schools all over the world have people like, oh, I wish there was an engineer I know. Did you put out an email? I'm sure somebody knows somebody who's an engineer. Like, you want to bring that person into your classroom. There's those resources that are one connection away that you can bring into your classroom to have these incredible experiences. And I know that the lawyers give their time, but did they seem like they enjoyed themselves coming down and being able to share their craft with kids?
Oh, absolutely. Especially when they got to tell stories of their most interesting cases. They lit up. And in their presentation, they put video clips from like Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
And there were some jokes that went over the kid's head, and me and my teacher partner are just sitting over there laughing. But we think it's great. It's nothing else.
Of course. Yeah.
And the kids just really seemed to respond to that. It was great. It was great.
That's cool.
And why did you decide to do all of this before you started reading the book? Like, I call it priming the pump. I don't know if you have a name for it. But this idea of like you bringing all the kids together, talking about lawyers and prosecution before you even say, oh, and by the way, we're not going to read this book and we're going to go through it with this lens.
Well, I think, part of the drive for that was the curriculum and the novels that comes with our 7th grade. There are a lot of heavy books, or, there seems to be something sad with each of them. We read the crossover first of all, and then we just finished the Diary of Anne Frank play before winter break.
Mm-hmm.
And kids were like, wow, this is like one depressing book after another. Now we're getting to The Outsiders, which doesn't have a great moment. I mean, lots of great moments, and so we're like, how do we really get their attention and engagement and just re-spark their, attention after winter break? and get them excited again, because it was a long time before winter.
Yeah. And so what's this look like now? What's the rest of this unit look like? Like, you're going to be reading the book. The kids are picking a character, I think you said, and they're going to look at that character's traits and how that character changes through the book.
Yeah. So actually, each class is divided into 3 groups. So the groups are around 10 kids each, and they will track the character traits kind of together, but kind of individually. And then they really need to work on pulling evidence out of the text and working on explaining that. And so that's really what we're looking for along the way. And then once we kind of get through the novel and they're going to regroup as a team and figure out, well, like, who found the best claim of evidence for whether this character's innocent or this character's guilty. And then they're going to decide who's going to be the prosecutor, the defense attorney, the witness, or if they want to bring in other witnesses of other characters in the book that we didn't directly write about. And then we're just going to put them on trial. We're going to see who can argue the best, right? Who can persuade that jury of peers. So the other 2 groups, while one of the 3 groups is being, in action, I guess, at that moment, the other 2 are going to be the jury.
Oh, very cool.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think isn't persuasive writing one of your standards too that you have?
Yeah, we do like argumentative.
Yeah, argumentative, persuasive. Yeah. I was going to say, I know that standard's in there right around that 7th grade. Yeah. I've memorized all the standards. That's how I know that. Yeah. No.
You keep them on your desk at your office all the time.
Right here. They're right here on the wall. I don't know.
Right
here. Yeah. Yeah. No. I just work with too many teachers at different levels. I kind of know where everything falls.
Yep.
But, very cool.
So Kaci, I love bringing in that authentic stuff for the kids to kind of introduce the idea and get them activated and energized. And having worked with you a little bit, I know you guys are doing some other projects in classes kind of throughout the year. What are some other examples of projects and things that you guys have done similar to that?
Yeah. So like I said, the unit we just did before this, we read Diary of Anne Frank, but we read the play version. And so we're toying with the idea of maybe even taking this unit out next year and putting it in our 7th grade drama class. Because it's really cool. We read the play, but then they had to kind of become the designers. And so they had to analyze, well, first of all, we researched the Holocaust because they didn't know what that was. And got, put them in the time frame. So they did a research project. And then once we read the play, they had to design a set or a costume. And we were very limited with our supplies and things. So the kids just drew them out and sketched them with their writing piece that they did. And they did informational writing with that. But we were hoping that maybe next year, if we put it in the drama program, that kids could actually build the sets and create the costumes. And because our drama program puts in a spring musical, but then the fall they do a play. They just got done doing Romeo and Juliet. So we're thinking it'd be really cool to be able to do Anne Frank in the fall and tie
very cool.
Yeah, because they kept asking, do we really get to make this?
Yeah.
I wish we could. I want to. Yeah. But this was the first year that our school has done the Summit Learning Program in 7th and 8th grade. We're piloting it and made like a choice model for kids in there. So not the whole 7th grade is doing this. So depending on what happens next year, maybe we can beef it up even more.
Cool. Very cool. Are you guys doing some podcasting this year too?
Oh yeah. My 6th graders just finished their podcasts.
Awesome.
Yeah. I think it went a lot better than last year. So Chris came in last year and played his podcast that he has with Aaron. And I think the issue last year is we had them write that full argumentative essay and then had them perform the podcast from that.
They just read it.
It was very robotic.
Yeah.
And so this year they really grabbed onto like the fun aspect of it and it didn't have to be perfect, and I got some of the funniest stuff in there and these fake ads that they included.
Awesome.
Still making their point. I think they had a lot more fun with it this year. And
cool.
I think there's 2 things with that. One, you've done it for 2 years. So you you're just better at setting it up, right?
For sure.
And so I think that has a lot to say with just the way that you set it up, the way that things are. The kids have more examples of it. And now you've done a podcast too, so you can say, I've done the podcast. Right?
Oh, you know what though? They keep asking me, they're like, do I get to listen to that? So I got to say shout out to First and Fourth Hour.
Yeah,
there it is. I love it. It's awesome. It's so cool. Very cool. Well, I want to thank you. I don't want to keep you too long because I know it's late and you've had a full day work and you've been reading all day and you got to go back tomorrow. So what a great episode though. I just love the things that you're doing, the way that you're blending the classroom, that anytime, anywhere learning stuff, taking advantage of snow days. I think it's something that teachers think a lot about. And I just love that you had a system set up and then were able to capture it and captivate with a captive audience, that was wanting it at home. And you didn't get every kid, but you got probably as many as you get during the day, right?
Yeah, you know what though? It actually turned out I got the kids in there that hardly did any work on a typical school day, right?
Isn't that funny?
Yeah. They might have been the kids farthest behind, but they were there and they participated. It was great.
Awesome. Cool. That's so cool. If people want to learn more from you or want to communicate with you, where can they reach out to you? Are you on Twitter or Instagram, or where do you are professionally?
I have a Twitter. I don't use it very often. I literally just reinstalled it. It is Kaci Sunshine with an underscore, I think.
All right. Okay.
But I do have an Instagram, a teacher Instagram, and it's Blended Coffee and Class.
Ooh, I like it. I'll have to follow that one.
She spent some time thinking about that name.
Yeah, that's great.
I did.
I love that. That's a really good one.
Agonizing over it.
That's great. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Chris, you can be found at Tech. I can never get yours right.
Tech Teach Travel.
Tech Teach Travel. I always want to see travel, tech, teach. Yeah, I can never remember. Tech
there's
first.
A couple.
Tech first. Travel second.
Teach first.
Teach.
Tech first. Teach second. Travel third.
Is that the way that you see your life? Do you see your life as like tech is number one, teaching is number two, and you love to travel? Like
I don't know. I don't know if I'd put them in order, but those three for sure are.
You apparently didn't spend as much time thinking about it as Kaci.
No, I didn't. I didn't know I'd be quizzed on this.
Well, I just always wondered. It's always hard because sometimes I'm like searching for you and I'm like,
sure.
Oh, I know it's tech, travel, and teach, but I can't remember what the.
And there's a few of us out there with the same things. Maybe that was it. Maybe I was like, well,
I don't want to fool you. He does love to travel.
I know he does. Yeah. Yeah. Tech, teach, travel.
Yes.
On the Twitter, right?
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Great talking with you. And we'll make sure all of those contact information and your Instagram so people can follow you are in the show notes as well. So appreciate it. Thanks for taking time.
Kaci, it was great seeing you. Thanks.
Great seeing you too. Bye.
Bye. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Shifting Our Schools with your host, Jeff Udick. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit sospodcast.org, facebook.com/Jeff Udick, and on Twitter @JUdick. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a review and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time on Shifting Our Schools.